Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hey folks, this is Andy Shiles with Simply Trade Podcast, and it's another great time. We're going to do a great show today. Today, we're going to get in and talk to a friend of mine, Bethany Seymour. Now, Bethany and I have met each other initially at the ICPA conference, and she's in the compliance arena, and we have, every time we get together, we laugh and talk. We get to cutting up on different things and almost get ourselves into trouble if we were sitting in a session. But anyway, Bethany, welcome to the show. Tell everybody who you're working with and where you're at now.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Bethany. I'm working right now with Regal Rexnord. We're a multinational or global manufacturer of a bunch of parts that you never realized were ours. So you probably heard us and experienced us somewhere in your daily life, and be it in an air conditioner or conveyor or something that makes something else that you touch. So that's where I'm at right now. But I am a licensed customs broker also. So I feel pretty confident in being able to speak to you, Andy, a little bit here. We'll see.
Listen, you'll forget more than I'm going to learn probably. So you're
test me on it.
Really up there. There we go. Well, with that, one of the things that with all this that's going on, the changes, the threats of tariffs, the accusations of China playing hardball again with certain things. There's other countries that are supporting or trying circumventing some of the sanctions that are out there and all that kind of stuff. Bethany, let me ask you, how do you keep up to date with some of this? It's just like an information overload. There's a lot of people. If you're new to a department or an area, you may have been there for a while and going, I need to do a better job of even trying to stay up to speed. And right now, the last 4 years has been somewhat of a sleeper. Now, all of a sudden, it is like, oh my gosh, only 3 weeks into the new administration, and it is just like overload. How do you keep up to speed or keep your sanity from your perspective? Because I know I'm like
Those
my elevator stuck between floors.
No, how do you keep up to speed and how do you keep your sanity are two very different questions, Andy.
That's true.
The best way I found to keep up to speed, number one, if you're not signed up for U.S. Customs CSMS messages, get signed up. There's no cost to them. Get signed up on them right now. Second best thing I tell you to do is go find some trusted trade lawyers. There's many of them in the business who publish out, regular newsletters and news blasts. I could name a few of them right now if you'd like me to. I don't want to leave anyone out though, but there's a number of firms. Braun Miller's one, Sandler, Travis, Rosenberg, Foley, Hoag, Aiken Gump. There's a whole bunch though.
George Tuttle, whenever he is responding, George is a great guy.
George is my hero. George is my hero. So listen, and I know I'm leaving people out, but there's many, 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 many. And when stuff like this happens, and we're not just talking when a new administration comes in, but when something changes in our business and in our world, your trade lawyers are the number one people who are going to help you get that information out. And they're people you can trust. They're not just random, Joe Schmo over there or Andy Shiles over there sending you some info. No, I just got to tease you a little, Andy. But, get on their newsletters, get on their news blasts. And then when something happens, you'll get that right away. When something comes across, then you can compare that information, save it to your folder. You can search it later on in your emails and pull it back up.
Well, the newsletters are helping. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. Global Training Center sends out a newsletter that is really, really good. It's a lot of times some of the topics we're talking about on these shows with Simply Trade, but then they cover several other things. But the point of the newsletter, you don't necessarily have to read cover to cover and all that. You can scan through these newsletters. If you see topics on several newsletters that seem to be hitting every one of them, you need to probably stop and go ahead and read the full article. But you can scan that stuff. Don't think that you're going to be able to digest everything. You just scan through a lot. You look at it. If it's pertinent to your industry, stop and read that one in more detail. But the other stuff you can just scan over.
And stick it in a folder, by the way. Stick it in a folder, because at some point you're going to realize maybe that was pertinent to your industry and you didn't know it at the time. But if you stick it in a folder and you search it and you find it, your email is going to be your friend there. So stick it in a folder somewhere. Don't just delete it. But
so you can come back and reference it and all that.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, as you're going through that, one of the things that I did now, different companies and different functions that you did. In my FedEx days, we actually had an extremely large, like regulatory affairs group. And so I had several employees. One of the departments I had was dealing with top importers and all that. And I had 21 professionals reporting to me. Of the 21, 18 were licensed brokers. So I had a big concentration. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had more licensed brokers than any other consulting firm in the country. But the other was the regulatory affairs group that I took that over. And I wound up assigning my staff and look to see who had a expertise in certain things. And if they didn't, I'd go ahead and then say, okay, I need you to become proficient in, let's say, FDA. I need you to become proficient with dealing with agriculture or animals or this or that. We had to deal with a lot of things. You can narrow it if you're in just one industry. My point is get your staff involved. And even if it's a part-time one or whatever, and say, okay, and I also went so far as if your company is involved in multiple trade associations, I assigned those and said, you need to look at this. If you're a small company and only do, a few trade associations, again, assign those out, whatever. And those are the ones that you need to, hey, what's the agenda? What are the committees you need to look at? And go from there. I don't know if that is any benefit to you. I don't know if you do those kinds of things, Bethany, or what?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And get involved in those trade organizations. So, look through many of them, and I'll use ICPA as one of the examples, but many of them have question and answer type ask and answer things. Use them. Search through the old questions, because if you've got a question, somebody else had a question. The library's there. The reference documents are there. So use them. Get involved.
Well, the other is now you're getting up to speed on some things. One of the other objectives that I guess are responsibilities, in my opinion, is the Import-Export Compliance Group, or even the transportation, or any department that you have. One of the things you should be looking at is what is your regulatory and government affairs agenda type things. It could be legislative. It could be a regulation with a bureaucrat or a department. It's the government affairs type things, industry affairs. What are the things that are pertinent to you? I always then looked and pulled the staff together, and we would look at what are the things that are out there that we would like to try and affect change on. And so in that is that then I, as the leader, I would look at it and go, okay, we need to pick our top 3. And while there's all these other things going, I understand that, but these are the top 3, top priority. All resources are going to be put for this year to get these things. What do we got to do to get them accomplished? And it could be that, it's going to require a bill or a law to be created. Okay. That's part of it. What do we got to do? Who do we got to talk to and all that? And it's not something that we're going to actually say we're going to get done. We're going to get it done through trade associations and affiliations on. But the point being is, what's your top 3 regulatory affairs issues? And then from there you can do, and other ad hoc things come up. But if those are your top regulatory and industry affairs type issues, And maybe you only have one or two. That's fine. But at least that's the focus throughout the year. And then you can communicate to your upper management and to the legal groups or whoever on here are the things that we need to be pushing for. Now, they may come back and go, we want you to also add XYZ issue. Okay, then they've added another issue for you. But the point being is they're going to turn around and ask you, what are our top issues if we are going to Washington or something like that? If you've got your list prepared, here's the issue. And if something comes up, they can always say, hey, if you talk to a senator, a congressman, a staffer, or anybody else, have them call me and I'll follow up. But that way you've talked to them, planted the seed, and then they'll hopefully get with you. What do you think about that?
I agree. And, it's funny because top three, you could say it in a different way too. Maybe an 80-20 approach would be another way to say it. What do you want to spend your top amount of time working on? What's the most that you could affect and actually affect? That's where you want to spend the most of your time on. So, and I think a top three approach, and it doesn't just come across when it comes to regulatory affairs. I think it also comes across anytime you're in any position. Let's say maybe I'm a brand new person coming into a brand new role. Where are the top three things I need to focus on so I can even express to you what my top three things are? Have I done a gap analysis yet? Have I sat with some of my other staff members around my room and, have I sat with a logistics person, the guy who does shipping every day, day in, day out? This is all he does is shipping, but maybe through sitting with him and shadowing his process, I might find that there's a major gap here. And this is something that I need to push to my top three. Maybe he's doing something that wastes time and wastes money. So, I think before you even get to your giant regulatory affairs part, you need to do a gap analysis and figure out your top three within your own personal business, your own company. Do an 80-20. Figure it out on your own.
Define gap again, because it could mean several things. I know what you're talking about, but it's a gap analysis is what? It's like, oh, great, I'm sitting here trying to work on classification. You're talking about gap analysis. What is it? It's like, what are we talking about?
Sounds terrifying. Gap analysis for me is the way that I would talk about it to someone who's never heard of a gap analysis before. Sit down and take one step back. I don't know anything about anything. Pretend like you are absolutely brand new to the company, brand new to the position, brand new to everything. Take all your preconceived notions completely out of it. Sit down and shadow the process A to Z. So maybe you need to sit first with your purchasing people and figure out from your purchasing people, what is their process? Ask them questions. Don't tell them what to do. Don't tell them where they're right or wrong. Ask them questions. Figure out what they are doing. And you have time later on to fix problems. Right now, you're just trying to identify problems. So sit with your purchasing. From purchasing, you need to sit with customer service. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and on all of those, there's another thing is the is map, should map is another way to put it. It's is map meaning is like you're mapping the current process, regardless if you think it's right or wrong or perfect or like, oh, we got to destroy this and start over. What's happening now? But to your point, ask them what they're doing. Don't try and flow chart everything. Just step one, you do this, and step two, just do it as an outline, and then the flow charts can come later. However, to your point, sometimes when you're asking, what are you doing? Ask also the question, why do you do it that way? Or
exactly.
Why?
You have to ask
I've
why.
always been told, I've been told we've always done it this way, or I don't know. Those are all right. Okay.
Those are valid answers.
That tells me, it's like, you know what? We need to do a better job of communicating what's going on. This is why it's important, and selling them on the idea of following the procedures a certain way. But anyway, so ask the question. The point is, what are you doing? But why are you doing that too at times? Why
is the number one? I've learned in my life there are two questions you can ask that will get you the best results. Number one, why are you doing it this way? Number two, how can I help you? Those are the two questions I found throughout my entire career that will allow you an open dialogue with someone else to be able to affect that change.
Exactly. And one of the things that I would say is it's always good to watch, and I would look at the process from start to finish, or however you want to do it. If you can't really always do that, it's okay. You've got to have the ability to look at the entire process, start to finish, and know what part you're dealing with and how it fits in there. Eventually, that'll all get flowcharted, and that's fine. And then you'll see opportunities for improvement. But the other thing that I always suggest is also, you see the process, and it's like, now start at the end of the process when the customers are getting delivery and work backwards, and you focus on the exceptions. When a customer doesn't get a timely delivery or the right delivery, and then you start working backwards and what happened. And then, if the accounts payable and accounts receivable both have challenges, the accounts payable, they can't pay the bill, or when they're paying the bill, they don't know what department to charge it to. Those kinds of things, like, well, okay, that means there's certain accounting codes that have to be in there, or certain information may be missing. That's like, okay, that's an exception that most people don't usually see.
Could just be customer service forgot to put a tax ID on something.
Oh, yeah. And the other is
they needed it, or why.
The customer service also in the scope of this is that if there's the right information in the order, and that may be the order system, it may not be somebody manually doing something wrong, it may be the system. But regardless, as you look at it, the shipment's delivered, or you're able to, after clearance or whatever the case may be, you may be able to bill then. However, it's not going out because you're not getting an EDI message timely from your carrier, or whatever the case may be. And you back it all the way up. Here's one of the challenges that I always give people. So let me ask you this, Bethany. You've got, I'm sure, shipments that are coming in from factories and whatnot. You use the harmonized tariff numbers that are on the paperwork when it comes with the shipment?
Never. Rarely.
And I
almost never.
And see, that right there is where I look at it. It's like, why not? Because, well, you can't trust the vendors, right? Well, I have a problem with that. That goes back to your saying the person. What will it take for that information to be accurate so that when it goes through, you can accept it? And a lot of that time comes from when the purchase orders are issued and information is going through. Right then is where that harmonized tariff thing, well, you got to get your purchasing to say, hey, a part doesn't just happen. Put this in there and things. But anyway,
well, okay. So let me take it one step backwards. Trade compliance is the one single department that overarches the entire company. We could deal with finance one day. We could deal with HR in a different country the next day. We could deal with shipping the next day. You might deal with all of them all in the same day. But there are in fact, I would challenge others to come up with one that would be the same. I can't think of another department in the company that has the opportunity to touch every single department at any point in time, every single day. So why not use that to your advantage? So if trade compliance is ignoring one area completely, then yeah, you're probably going to get some dumb HTS codes or HS codes on your shipping documents. And they're dumb because you don't make widget B, you make widget A. So if I'm not making something in the automotive industry, why would I expect to see an automotive HS code on my documents? Well, because that shipper does make automotive parts, and maybe an electromechanical brake could be for an automotive type situation, whereas I'm not using it for that type of scenario. So in my case, I don't want to see the automotive. Did I ever tell them that? No. Then of course I expected them to put the wrong code on there. So trade compliance, again, you touch every single other department every single day. Use it to your advantage.
Well, and to that point, now more than ever, again, this is that probably in the last 3 weeks, the compliance groups are at the table again. And, what do you think? What's the impact? What do we got to do? So one of the things that I always caution people, don't react, respond. So there's a lot of times All right, 25% duty rate on Canada and Mexico. Oh, no, it's like, okay, well, calm down. It's actually a negotiating tool to try and get something else going on. I saw
And not
somebody
only
posted.
that, but walk in with ideas too. Sorry, Andy. I
Exactly.
interrupt when I
No,
get excited. Walk
no,
to the
I love
table
it.
with some ideas.
Yes.
There's ways that you don't have to respond even just as a response. I mean, we can have a call and response, but I can walk in and say, well, have we thought about first sale? Have we thought about drawback? Have you thought about reconciliation? Have you thought about? What about free trade agreements? What about this? And then we can have
And
a dialogue.
changing your source on something. It's like, why do you always, it's like going to China? Like, listen, a lot of people have changed
Just
their
because you
sources.
always made it there.
It's like, you know what? There's a lot of other, believe it or not, there's a lot of technology manufacturers in Ireland, and most people don't even realize that. And they have some
depending
really
on
good
the
ones,
industry, they've got some great ones.
in the industry, I would look at sources around the world that already have trade agreements. You mentioned that,
Yes.
Australia and New Zealand as well.
Singapore, Korea. Yeah, there's so many.
The UK, and some of it's like, well, but we're trying to get, cheap or inexpensive imports. And I'm like, I'm fine. Everybody wants inexpensive imports, but I don't want them at the sacrifice of U.S. exports. As I'm looking at that, those are the things that you just said it, and it was right on the money. When you're going in and have the opportunity to your upper management, you may need to just sit there and listen, but have some ideas ahead of time, or listen to it and say, you know what, there's a problem you just came up with or something. You know what? I'll do some research and I'll come back. Don't jump out there to try and BS your way to say, well, I'll figure it out. If you don't know, that's one thing. Just say, you know what? I need research of that.
There is nothing wrong with that answer. I'll tell you that right now. It's saved my butt a few times. So, that's funny because being in compliance, there's way too much information. It's impossible for anyone to memorize any one of these single books that are on my empty bookshelf back here, because I don't have, normally I have all my books on my bookshelf, but but it's impossible. But
you're renovating, so that's it.
I know. I'm renovating. No, it's impossible to memorize it all. And the thing about compliance is you need to know where to go to find the information. Not supposed to know the information. There are certain bits of information you have to know, but you need to know that something exists and where to go to read up more about it. You're not supposed to memorize it. It would be like trying to fit everything into your little hat there, Andy.
Yeah.
No, I know it's a big hat, but no, there's just too much. And that's actually what I love the most about compliance too, is there's so much and it changes every day. So even if you did memorize it, it wouldn't be the same as yesterday.
Well, one of the things too is, how do you keep yourself sharp? I mean, as the old adage, I think iron sharpens iron. It's one of those where even with as busy as we are, too often we can we keep ourselves so busy that we don't stop for our own self-development. And it's up to you if you need to develop skills or gain knowledge to become more proficient. But that network is developing a network of contacts, so you can even just pick up the phone and say, are you dealing with this, or a soundboard? Because there are people that you need to be able to talk to say, you just wouldn't believe what I'm going through. And you can't really do that with people within your own company. Sometimes if they're not in your little niche, they're going to like, I don't know what you're talking about.
They're going to look at you sideways. And why do you need to know? Well, okay, so I've got a twofold answer to that. Number one is never stop asking questions. If you've already done your gap analysis, if you've gone A to Z, go Z to A. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Because you're going to find something different every single time. And number two is go back to those resources we talked about at the very beginning. We talked about your network of people, your network of trade lawyers, getting on those newsletters, going to the seminars, going to, even just to check out the website. Compliance is also a very small field, believe it or not. It's one of those types of fields where you could meet the same person at 3 different jobs, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on if they're handy or not. But you could meet the same person, you could bounce those ideas off of them, and really, even though we all make different products, we're all in the same field. We're all here for the same purpose and the same reason, and we're all here to help each other, because every single one of us know exactly how hard it is to do our job on a day-to-day basis. So I know I can pick up the phone or shoot a text message or an email and say to about 10 different people, I could say, hey guys, I'm really struggling with this one. Anybody got an idea? And to that, if you don't know anybody yet, to that point, get involved with some of these organizations similar to NCBFAA, ICPA. There's probably a World Trade Center in your local community, at least in the big major communities. I know that I'm up in the mountains of Fort Collins, Colorado, so I'm way up kind of in the middle of nowhere. But about an hour and a half south in Denver, there's a World Trade Center that does monthly meetings. So go to their luncheons. Ask questions on the soundboards. In fact, even something as simple as LinkedIn. There are LinkedIn groups. There's Facebook groups for, trade compliance professionals. Join them.
And there is a great podcast show that you ought to listen to.
There's that one podcast show. I forgot the name of it, though.
I love it.
You got to listen and learn, and you can never stop learning. If you find yourself becoming stagnant, that's the point in time where you set an alarm clock and you take, 10 minutes out of a very, very busy day, and you just go catch up on your news, catch up on your stories, as my grandma would have said, catch up on your stories.
Well, with that, and it's going to help you. I would say also it would be wise to draft an email at times or some kind of communique to your upper management and others, and be that voice of reason. I mean, the political winds can go both ways, but it's like, hey, at the end of the day, your business has got to function. Hey guys, don't panic. What's going on with the Panama Canal? Hey, we've got stuff coming from China that's on a ship going through the Panama Canal. How's that going to be affected? Well, if it's destined to the U.S., that's one thing. If it's destined somewhere else, you got different things to think about. Look at alternatives to your supply chain. Work with all that. But all that to say is, with everything that's going on, the other thing is when there are issues that come up. Case in point, all right, the Houthis were and still are a bit of an issue, but not as much right now. But the Houthis were attacking cargo ships in the Red Sea, right? And so the net effect of that was what? Your cycle times went dramatically up if you're using a carrier that instead of going through the Red Sea, they had to go all the way around the Cape of Africa and come up. Okay. That additional transportation costs because they added fuel. But here's the other question. What opportunities does that create? Most people are going, oh man, this is slowing up my shipment because it's on a ship going halfway around the world and all this. Yeah, but now, and the other I was just going to say though is, what about those countries like South Africa, Namibia, which is just north of South Africa, and some of those along there? Cargo ships coming around, they're going to be doing tech stops. They're going to be, an increase in frequency and goods coming out of those countries and all that. Well, maybe there's an opportunity there to change sources. And if there's enough business, they'll keep that frequency going. But the point being is, okay, you got a problem in one part of the world, but it may create an opportunity in another part.
Absolutely. And on that note, you hit it a minute ago. On that note, you may not recognize every opportunity right away because you may not be as tuned in to a certain facet of the supply chain as someone else is. You hit it a minute ago, Andy. What about doing your own internal newsletter? I do this monthly for our global company, and I'll take some of the stuff that we get from all these different trade lawyers or, groups or whatnot. And I'll take the ones that apply to the products, the type of products that we manufacture, the type of situations we find ourselves in. And I'll redact some of those, news blasts, and I will put something together monthly that says, hey, these are the articles this month that I think that you might want to see or be a part of. I can also use that as a training tool. So maybe I'll think somebody needs a refresher on Incoterms, for example. Well, you know what? Here, I'm going to use my newsletter as a refresher on Incoterms and put a short article in there. You break it up into snippets, and you're also educating everyone else in your group and giving them opportunities to say, hey, I saw that opportunity in South Africa or wherever it was. Do you think we could maybe potentially source here instead? And then maybe, who knows, depending on the industry, maybe AGOA is something you can take advantage of. So it allows you to bring up conversations that you may not have been able to have before. Because you didn't
become
have
a resource. You yourself become a resource for upper management
nice
or
job
peer management. Well, it is. And it's one of those, listen, anybody can do what I call a hit and run communique. You can draft up something. Here you go, send it out. All right. The issue there and the challenge is, how do you do this consistently? That's the big thing. If you are providing even just a short little snippet, not much to report on the international trade side, but here's this. Or, hey, listen, if any of you are going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. or to
there's something you can do.
Let me know. I'll give you a back pocket list. I used to call it a back pocket list. I'm sorry.
Back pocket list. Absolutely.
All right. And that's where, just so people know, is you can imagine in my FedEx days, Civil Logistics days, I was with the U.S. Council for International Business. I was with Boomerang Carnets and all that. And so we would go through, and I'd have a list. Nobody can remember all these things. So I'd have a very short back pocket list that I would provide to executives. If you are traveling, that's the upper management. You're not going with them. If they're traveling, you run into somebody from the FDA or agriculture or from this Congress.
There's a few things to pull out.
There's something to say, oh, you know what? There was something. Let me look at it. Okay. Hey, and it's whatever one issue is that on the FDA, you were looking at reclassifying some of the medical devices. It's going to affect our issue. There's something there. I need your support on that. Would you mind calling my compliance person, whatever, and you give them the name and number, and they go from there. So yeah, okay, great. Or do you mind if I have my compliance person reach out to you? That's either way. It's the same thing with this bill maybe come through, whatever the issue is. You can have this is what we need, and this is, you just keep it really short and simple. I guarantee I have had more executives come back to me and say that they were very appreciative of the list, but it made them look like a hero because it gave them a short thing that they are more on top of things. Nobody expects them to have the minutia detail. That's what our job is for. Give them a little bit, they can tap the seat, and man, it opens the door for you.
Exactly. I could not agree more.
Listen, let's wrap this up. We need to look at, you and I could keep talking. There's all kinds of things. We could talk
forever, Andy. We might need to have a part 2 one of these days.
Yeah, well, it's like, okay, so if you're new to the area and all that, these things I've given you is kind of like a building, a foundation to stand on for your career and everything else. That's fine. The other would be more advanced of how do you get in and keep up to speed with the more advanced topics and climb up the chain a little bit. And that networking comes into play, right?
Big time. I think we could talk forever on it.
Well, Bethany, you are a pleasure. I hope to see you at some conference coming up. I know that for sure I'll be going to the ICPA in Dallas in the fall. There's ICPA coming up in Orlando. There are AEI conferences.
There's a Canada one coming up too.
Another and actually, I just came back from Canada in November, so I was up there.
A little chilly there right now.
IE Canada, and there's great band. There's some great people. I got to see some folks I hadn't seen in a long time.
I love it.
And it was just fantastic. So, anyway,
I hope I'll get to see you at the next one. How's that?
I love it. I love it. Folks, we are so appreciative again of your listenership. Please like us, share us, subscribe, follow us, all those kinds of wonderful things. Bethany, you are such a pleasure. Golly, it's just great to get to talk to you. It's been a while since we've actually been able to talk. So appreciate
I'm
you.
looking forward to the next time too. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for letting me spitball with you here.
You bet. Y'all have a great day.